Hi there, and welcome to a 3-minute video about computer parts, what they do and what they look like. I am making this almost entirely because I need content, and because I've always wanted a quick and dirty guide I can point people to when they ask basic PC hardware questions. One quick thing to note before we get started. Laptops use the same parts, scaled down and changed in whatever way the manufacturers need to make it work for their product, and obviously they run on batteries, not the wall, okay? Okay. Let's start with the cases. This, pretty obviously, is the case that all the parts go in. There are 3 main case sizes: ITX small, ATX medium, and EATX large. There are others, but for our purposes we don't need to talk about them because they're pretty much all dumb. Next up is the motherboard. This is the main component that all the other parts connect into to communicate with one another. Think of it as a room all the PC parts stand in and talk to one another, screaming loudly and viscerally. If that room is broken, like the roof caves in or is on fire, they won't be able to talk with one another anymore. There are 3 main sizes of motherboard, which correspond to the sizes of cases, this being ITX for small ITX cases, ATX for medium ATX cases, and EATX for extra small FSX cases. Nah, just kidding. It's EATX for EATX. Makes sense, right? Yeah. Moving on, we have arguably the most important thing that lives on in the motherboard, the CPU. The CPU, Central Processing Unit Processor, or Intel, I'll get to that in a moment, is like the thinking brain of the PC. It allows the computer to do all the aggressively complex logic that it makes the computer able to think, consuming a fair bit of power and generating no small amount of heat as it goes. Now, you may know CPUs as Intels, however, that's not entirely correct, since Intel is actually just a manufacturer of CPUs. There are 2 of them, Intel, of course, being the big boy, everyone knows him, and AMD being the little underdog, runty, I'ma-get-there-coach kind of dealio. Moving on to the physical characteristics, the CPU sits on pins, either directly on the motherboard or on the CPU, which then jams into the motherboard, depending on the particular model. Next up is the RAM. Which stands for Random Access Memory, and is sometimes simply referred to as just memory. This memory, RAM, is simply a place for your computer to hold bits of codes and textures and whatever it needs right here, right now, readily available to the PC to use. When the power is pulled, the memory is wiped. We use memory like this for short-term storage because hard drives, as it turns out, are really slow and bad at quickly retrieving scattered information. Memory is measured in gigabytes or megabytes if your computer is super aged, and the reasonable amount to have these days is about 8 gigabytes. Medium is about 4 gigabytes, and actually, you don't really want to go much below that, because then you'll just be getting into my computer doesn't work territory. Next up is hard drives. This is also called storage, hard disks, and drives, and as I explained earlier, memory by people who shouldn't be calling it that. These hard drives are where the computer stores any code it wants to remember long term. Capacity is measured in gigabytes, with bigger drives being measured in terabytes, the next measurement up. Things that would be stored on a hard drive include the operating system, like Windows or Mac OS, programs, and any files you might have accrued over the lifetime of your PC. There are 2 kinds of hard drives: spinning disks and solid state. Spinning disks are very much like precise DVDs. They can store info on them in the form of magnetic particles, which can be read, written, and interpreted by a read head. Solid-state drives work by storing the information using very small electronic circuits with components that will arrange in a certain circuit to resemble ones and zeros, which is, of course, binary, which can then become stored data that your computer's operating system can read. This is a gross oversimplification, but it's quite complex, really, and beyond scope of this video. If you want to learn more, check out the video explaining computers did on it, linked down in the doobly-doo. The final necessary component in the PC is the power supply, also called the PSU, which stands for Power Supply Unit. Makes sense. This is basically like a switch box in a house, routing different kinds of power to different parts of the computer and making sure that it doesn't get those different power signals mixed up. It's very important that this part of the computer not be super cheap, since if it is, it may get confused and start sending 12 volts to a part of your computer that's only meant for about 0.5, frying it quite nicely. I recommend, of course, then spending a bit more money on your power supply so you don't have to spend a lot more later down the road replacing it after you crispified it. Power supplies also have different ratings for the amount of power they can supply to a PC, measured in watts, seen here. Lastly, PSUs, yes, we all remember what that means, don't we, have efficiency ratings. This indicates what percentage of the power the PSU, there's that word again, pulls from the wall that it can use. Here's a chart explaining it. Yes, lovely, isn't it? Yes. Moving swiftly away from that, we come to the tricky one, graphics cards, also called GPUs. They are add-in cards, which can only be added to desktop PCs, sorry laptops, which gives your computer a dedicated graphics processor. Fancy. These units are much more specialized than a CPU, and so can much better handle the kinds of maths involved with graphics calculations than a CPU could ever do. This translates to superior graphics capability. Quick note, most modern CPUs have really gimpy graphics processors built onto them for basic compatibility, and these will output from a motherboard, so most PCs don't need graphics cards, though I would very strongly recommend adding one anyway if you plan to do anything serious like gaming or video editing or not just mostly gaming. To receive output from graphics cards, you must plug into the port found at the back of them, not, may I make this very clear, the display ports that can be found at the back of the motherboard, which will just give you the output from those aforementioned gimpy CPU-based graphics processors. Graphics cards are hot-running components in the system, and they often need their own power connectors from a PSU. They are frankly the most complex and generally most expensive thing in a computer, and they deserve many videos on their own, which can be found at quickie, link in the description down below. To wrap things up, let's quickfire cover some components. Okay, Wi-Fi cards. They can manifest as either these little USB dongle thingies, or big cards that plug into slots in your motherboard like such. They provide Wi-Fi, not much else to say about them. Move on. Fans are for forcing air in and out of your computer's case, and frankly, a couple, 3 is a good number, will do fine unless you have a water cooling setup, which is another topic entirely, don't worry. Cooling stuff. Anyway, optical drives like CD or DVD readers / burners are mostly a thing of the past, but I figure I'll mention them just for reference. Anything else? Peripherals. This includes keyboards, webcams, mice, mics, that sort of thing. Modern ones can simply be plugged in with USB, the magical one-stop shop for all plugging in needs, and older ones use PS2 ports, not very much worse. Yes! Anything older than that, like one of these gangly things, is niche weirdness that you don't want to use anyway. Monitors connect to the graphics output of your PC, and they display whatever the graphics processors are spitting out. It's simple. Again, I think that's everything. No, that's good. Okay, let's wrap things up. Again, this should answer most base-level questions, but for any questions regarding higher-level stuff, you can always consult YouTube. For example, there are different kinds of RAM as well as different hard drive interfaces, both of which I couldn't cover in this video, because I could honestly make like 15, 20-minute videos on each another day. That aside, I hope this video has been informative, and maybe you'll join me again next time for a significantly different piece of work. Maybe that movie review I promised. If you liked, dibble me with a like. If you didn't, smash that dislike button, and let me know in the comments why you hated this thing with such a passion. If you have any other non-hate related comments, feel free to leave those as well. If you want to stick around for any more of my pretty much on average B tier content, hit that subscribe button. Bell is optional. I don't really care because I know I certainly never use it. Beyond that, thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. Catch you later. Oh yeah, and one more thing. I think I'm gonna review Teddy Ruxpin on VHS as opposed to the big green. I think I'd get a lot more mileage out of something people kinda know about. Thanks for understanding.